Yesterday it was dark, and there is no chance while it's dark for anyone to go out and go look for water. So we walked back, ate a bunch of mushrooms, and we advanced time about 5 hours. It wasn't enough, so we sent our shade back home and played a bunch of music. So now we're in the daytime. It's kind of odd to think of time counting down backwards and trying to figure out what time of day it is. But we've just returned and we've brought another mushroom with us just to show that it no longer casts light. And here in this place, there's nothing we can do with it. We can't plant it. We can eat it, of course. And unfortunately, we can't climb up this ladder with a mushroom in our hands. So, if we really want to see what's upstairs, that is the right term, right? Going up a ladder, calling it upstairs. No more crickets. Just a nice, shiny green. And from here, we would wait till someone comes by. When you first start the game, you see this place. It's really nice that at the very intro of the game, you're seeing the outside world as you go deep, deep under the earth, till it goes straight down to where the king is. And then there is a small area where we get the intro credits. There is some speculation, which I'll share, but I wonder if you line up the maps as they appear in the game, is it just a straight shot down from here directly to the king? Considering we always end up going a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right, and when we walk through the darkness, it was a long walk to the right, and then another long walk, very long walk through the darkness to the left. So, does it line up? I don't know. But there's a symbol I wanted to point out. One, pick that up. One that you can see in the art. It's a sort of shield-looking symbol with a upside down heart on it. I mention it because there is a heart-looking symbol in that little house right there. And it's the logo for the company. You can see it at the top left corner of our screen. That little shield. It's sort of the brand icon for the game itself, or for the company, however you would like to call it. We have a good bit to share today. I would hope someone comes by. Give it a couple minutes. It's not really a set time that someone comes walking by, such as like at the perfect hour every hour. It's not like that. And I think for everyone who has played through this moment, all sense of time just disappears. It stops when you hear and see those little footsteps. Everything just becomes that sole focus of, I must reach the bucket. And you walk so slowly, you feel it in your steps. It becomes a race. It's like the two tortoises racing each other. There's no hare involved. You just hope that you can walk downstairs and climb down a ladder fast enough. My best friend and I, when we first played this game together, this was the ending she had reached for. And the night before, she had just succeeded in going through the darkness. And her shade sat right here, fell asleep, because it was nighttime. And in the morning, when we both got up, we came over and started the game, and we were just sat here, watching, waiting. And she and I had talked. I had showed her some pictures I had taken, things that I had learned about people on the surface, the things that we have learned from the face, about there being the blind man and the small troll, and perhaps a clue on how they would treat you. So we determined this would be the best thing we would do. We would just sit and wait. And I had thought perhaps we would sit here and wait, and that we wouldn't be fast enough once they arrived to run down and reach the bucket. And the only thing we could do then is perhaps just wait for a day or so, just to see if there's a pattern of boy, girl, or if it's boy, boy, girl, or whatever it might be. And after having reviewed the pattern, then we can just wait there at the bottom of the well. And when the bucket comes down, to make our choice. It was fortunate for us that, no, the developer understands what's going through the mind of the player at this point, and they set it up in a different way, where this is intended that you can stand here and you can wait and watch for someone to come by, and it's all you need is a small glimpse. Each little stone I hear, I'm stopping to listen to see if I really am on edge. Was that a footstep I heard? But the developer, he lined things up just well enough. And I mean, just, it's just. And I would like to share that. But we don't have to wait. I have played this game multiple times and do have videos of having gone through this. And I do have the save files from characters that have rode them. This was my first time at the well. This is what I did. I just sat my shade in the well and waited. And struggled to wake up. Indeed, I saw the option, but I didn't take it. I wanted to know. I didn't know who it may have been lowering that bucket. I just wanted to know, was this a possibility? And this was that first time that I saw that happen. Oh look, a bucket. Should I jump in? I'll just have to hope that my helper above is not too... What did that say? Let's go back. Hope that my helper above is not too easily scared. But who might it be? This may have been my best friend playing, and after seeing that, I hesitated. Who might it be? We don't know. So, if you do choose for the troll, she screams, drops the bucket, and you fall. This game is a metaphor a lot of times for dealing with loneliness, dealing with longing, and how to overcome it. And sometimes trusting in the wrong person to overcome your loneliness, it can cause you to retreat back into yourself and perhaps never willing to try again. Notice here the wording, flight from loneliness has failed miserably. It doesn't mention caves or anything at all of that sort. The soul has fallen silent. The longing has ended. The developer has shared that in some ways these endings, they're his own ways of dealing with loneliness. One day he's feeling in one way. Another day he'll feel a different direction. Sometimes just feeling like, nope, just end this day. Just kill it. Suicide. Sometimes it's trusting in the wrong person to try to cure your loneliness. Here it is. This is my best friend when she played. The Switch only takes 30-second videos, so you don't see the long walk and us identifying that it was indeed. I've reached the outside world, but at what cost? The kingdom has collapsed. The king is gone. I will never return to the place below the earth. So this is a fun point to share. Instead of just video, of a profile, right here, right at this point. I saved it because you can walk around. The kingdom has collapsed. King is gone. I'll never be able to return to the place below the earth. There are certain places in this game that I just enjoy, and this is one of them. So I know what the ending is. I can just load up my best friend's profile from this point. I want to see that. But this place in between, where you can't return to the caves and you can wander around, I just wanted a place to be here. I wonder who carried all these stones here. What person would live in a place this small? Our little shade has no idea of how things are in the outside world. I like this tree. It looks like it has an eye and a little hat face mouth on it. The first time you get here, the time will still keep counting down, and if you were to leave the game and return, the timer would be at 0. The Shade comments when he first sees this place. He says something to the effect of, "Oh, what an interesting palace." I think I have a picture of it. No, you can't ride the swing. You wouldn't know how. There is some great fan art of it, however, of the Shade riding the swing. Oh, grave. Looks like perhaps a little red flower on it. The inscription reads, "Deep beneath the earth here is laid a poor soul who is now forever lost." That's a weird thing to put on a tombstone. Usually you talk about how they lived or something. We have some speculation I'll share in a moment. I don't intend on skipping this realm quite yet. So the main reason why I created this profile is because I had thought perhaps there's some other ending, there's some way to escape. And I just wanted to leave the character out here to see if time would continue, if perhaps, as you can see, it's daytime. If we sat here long enough, would it become nighttime? It does not. Even though it becomes nighttime when you're underneath the caves, once you reach the surface, that's it. Time is frozen in this small moment. So there is a good bit of speculation, but we'll revisit that in one moment. Let me load up some video, or I can just load up the other profile of what happens when you go through the door. I can finally see the sun, although it's not shining too bright today. How would the Shade know what a bright, shining sun looks like? This is his first time experiencing it, as far as we know. I like the feeling of grass under my feet. So numbingly pleasant. It looks like the shade's eyes are somewhat faded. It's just the way the image is captured. There was nothing with his eyes when you're playing it. I wonder if we carried all these stones. Right. What a beautiful place. I think I will enter this newfound kingdom. And then your shade walks in. I'm going to pause here for a second because the video is going to stop. This is a new person. We don't know who this person is. But there at the left, you have the credits. And unlike the other endings that we've seen so far, you have these arrows at the bottom that we can click. You see our shade getting completely cleaned. And shade, you have skin? And our shade doesn't need to eat for sustenance, but probably feels out of place. Is this how we do it? Because nobody else is drinking, they're all eyes on him, so he must feel like, awkward. You can see there at the right, the bottom, the icon with the upside down heart, as I was pointing out before. This one is regarded by the community to be the quote-unquote best ending. The developer has shared they're just different endings. Oh yeah, we can move again to the right. And if you look on the floor, the face of the king has completely fallen off. His hand and part of his leg have crumbled. And we switch from the cheerfulness to sadness. I wanted to point out, when we entered that last scene, let me go back to the images. This is something the developer has shared with the community, that in the ending, once you enter, the screen pans up. And then it fades out right there. However, in the first version of this ending, the developer, it's still in there. The imagery is still in the game, that it continues to pan up to the top. And at the top is a nest. In the nest is a stork. And the stork kind of shakes his head disapprovingly. It was something to give the player some doubt about choosing this ending, and in some ways to let the player reconsider, like, is this not the best ending? I'm going to load up another profile. So, deep beneath the earth, here is laid a poor soul who is now forever lost. Technically, when you're burying something, it's just underneath the ground. So, if there's something in the caves, it's technically already under the ground. We're just making a tombstone for it. I think this is a tomb for the king. If you recall the very beginning of the game, it says deep, deep beneath the earth, and then the intro begins. So the wordage here, deep beneath the earth, it follows that same pattern. And then, as we saw with the king, the ground having shook and rumbled, the kingdom has collapsed. The king is gone. I will never return to the place below the earth. That someone else has also come to this conclusion, that the kingdom had collapsed and that the king is gone. And we did see that. We saw that image of the king having completely broken apart. There, the longing has ended. So I like to think that's a grave for the king. I know there's other community theories, and they like to think that the shade, this was a grave for the shade, and perhaps why this area off to the left has been destroyed is to perhaps prevent someone else from climbing up there, getting themselves hurt, and meeting an untimely end. We don't know. And so the theory goes that the shade was alive, living as a normal person at some point. They died. And then the king used that soul and created his own servant, follower, dwarf. There were a lot of countless names in the original poetry for who that individual is, but they believe that's where it came from. It's just that person, but reborn. And now they've climbed out and they've returned to their family. However, if you look at the woman, she's a bit like a frog. The girl, she's a troll. Were they your family? Really? I mean, there is a resemblance between your shade and this other guy. I mean, if you look at the nose, right? They both have this long nose. So my theory is, look at this picture, the one right in the middle, picture of a shade. It has sort of a resemblance, but it's not our shade. Our shade doesn't look like that. Our shade has never looked like that. Our shade has never worn clothing until now. And the little bit of slope of the nose, it kind of resembles the same slope of this guy's nose, right? And then if you look at the picture next to it, it's another picture, another person wearing perhaps something pink. They have a little bit of a beard, a little bit of hair on the top of their head, and their eyes are closed. It perhaps is a blind guy before he is now. You know, he's grown older. I've mentioned it before when we're playing throughout the game. When we go through the mines, you know, somebody has left an attic here. The king wouldn't use it. Somebody else, perhaps. These tunnels, somebody was digging something here, but then they get stopped. And they've started digging somewhere else. And these lead us to disappointments. And a lot of the crafting inside the caves, it seems like somebody was living there. Somebody was exploring there. But who? We haven't seen anybody. And who could it possibly be? So my theory is that there was another shade. A shade that did care for the king, and they left. That's why when we start the game, the king says, "You, my faithful servant, this place is yours, but there's one thing you must not do. That's to leave the caves." Because perhaps a previous shade did leave those caves. The previous shade did go and fill the entrance or the exit that they had mined out with granite, something that they know that can't be mined through. Just on the way to the well, there is one mattock right there, right at the very edge of the well. And the shade remarks, from picking it up, oh, hey, there's perhaps a secret door here. It's the one clue that leads you to the well, a matic, right there at the very top. So my theory is that that old blind guy was the previous shade, and he had escaped, and he came to that conclusion that the kingdom has collapsed, the king is gone. And this was his little shrine to the king. Deep beneath the earth, here is laid a poor soul, the king, who is now forever lost. But the king wasn't forever lost. He used up his power. He created another servant, us. And then we begin our journey, our game. But by choosing this ending, the power that the king spent was wasted. And, the 400 days had elapsed. No one had woken him. And I like to think of it perhaps as, it says clearly there, the longing has ended. It doesn't say our longing. Perhaps it was the king's longing. Perhaps he just wanted a friend, and he made them, but we betrayed him. And we chose instead to do what was right for us, and we left. I'm not the first one to point this out, this detail about these pictures. And instead of referencing the shade with them and saying, oh, this is who the shade was before he died, and then the king revived him and he has come back and this is his family, instead to say that this shade is him. Oh, also note, he has his own throne. We have a picture of our own throne, our own little chair that we have in our home. It's not this man's chair, as you can see. This one has 4 wooden legs, while this one is perhaps some sort of a recliner. It's a very different chair. Similar, but different. Perhaps this is just a memory of his first chair, his first throne. Who would do that? Perhaps a shade. So that's putting all the pieces that we have, that the game has shared with us, into a different story. In the end, we don't know. The developer has never confirmed any theories that anyone has shared about who or what the game has to say. And that's fair. As we shared before, symbolism doesn't really have a single answer. And when it comes to making art, it's best to let the player or let your reader, whichever sort of medium you're using to tell your stories, to let it connect to the person playing it. Let them dig around, let them search for things, let them find meaning. Maybe some of the meaning is what the developer intended, but maybe they just wanted it to be ambiguous. I know from my own game design and some colleagues of mine, we sometimes take something that we were crafting, such as a little bit of story from one game that we were creating, and include it as like a bit of an Easter egg in another game that we're making. And with this developer, he has some animations they've done. If you go to his website, if you search for the studio, I believe you can find it, or you can just search for his name and you can find the website. There's some videos there and things, and there are some linkages to this game, namely a picture called Rapeseed, and there's also a picture of fields. And I had wondered, I don't know what those mean. I have no understanding of what it could mean. If you go back to our second or third episode from streaming, you can find them on YouTube, by the way, if you wanted to go back and see what other things that we've talked about and what we've explored. So I mentioned it when looking at the picture. I have no idea what this means, but digging around, I did find a reference to a movie, a short 10-minute movie. I think perhaps let's watch that next time on stream. but it is that linkage, that reference. It's just kind of a nudge, a nod to their own works. So some of these, such as this painting, nobody knows in the community what relevance this has to this game. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it references a past work or perhaps a future work that this developer wanted to create. So there are some things that we don't know, we don't understand, and that's fine. Perhaps this was an adventure that this shade has taken. Perhaps this is the place that this broken pathway leads to. And he doesn't want anyone to go there. It's prevented it. I've speculated when we've gone through the caves, certain places, certain stairways that we didn't have access to. The library itself that was blocked off. Perhaps this other person, when they were a shade, when they knew that they were leaving, they blocked access for purposely to prevent others from ever reaching there, to who knows? Who knows what secrets that they were trying to keep? We don't know. We can only speculate. But to me, this theory of us having lived here and that this was our grave, I don't think that's spot on. I think instead, this is the grave for the king. This is back to the playthrough we're having right now. Maybe I should return to my home. I think that's a good idea, little shade friend. To support the theory, the idea of even a Matic won't help me here. So close, and yet so far. Who moved these stones? Who would intentionally cover up this place? Part of the theory is that perhaps us as a shade died here, or perhaps there was some sort of argument with the king, and this other person just wanted to block it off. I think they wanted to separate themselves from the king and never return. So a shade spending many days to not just carve out granite, but to bring it here. He would have spent many years probably doing this, and he does look it. But for another shade to jump out of the well, why would he be surprised by that? A shade. Unlike the troll girl, who is just frightened of everything. Frightened to the point that she just lets go of the rope and lets you fall. I find it interesting that it's intended for the player to come to this place and to see this place. But if you wanted a different ending, you would have to make that decision that, no, I don't want to leave. And I say that because the bed. The bed takes 10 pieces of wood and 20 moss. The moss is easy to come by, but the wood is pretty rare to find all 10 pieces of wood that you can build a bed with. The last two were right here. So it is intended that if you want to build a bed for your home, to make it a nice, fancy home, that you would have had to come here and be tempted to leave. I know in an earlier version of the game came out on PC and Mac before it came to the Switch, and there was a lot of development that had happened since that time. But on the PC, you can just access your save files, and you had you could back them up, save scumming. So you could play the ending, you could watch these endings, and then you could restore a backed up save file and keep playing, perhaps towards the 400 days. With the Switch, however, we don't have that option. To consider it's perhaps not just our longing, but the king's longing as well. So, in the paintings, what led me to wanting to wait to see if it would be nighttime while staying outside? It's because there's a great number of images of the moon and the sun. And if you try to use all 5 colors, actually, I can share this. We can let our shade walk. While he's walking, have pictures of pictures. So stay or leave. That one's quite obvious, the stay picture being with the image of the shade wearing, well, it's the symbol of soul, but a crown. Or leave, darkness behind into the light. But right below it, night versus day. And this got my brain pondering. When we leave, it's during the day. Could we leave at night? Is such a thing possible? And so I made that profile just to see if it was possible to leave during the night. And that's why I left them outside. It was mainly because of this. And there are other people who have speculated, is it possible to leave at night? Well, at the beginning of the stream, I brought a mushroom with us to see if perhaps we can do something with it. And there was no place to plant it, no place to grow it. And even the light, as we had seen yesterday, the light goes dim at a point. Symbolically, it's kind of like we're the one leading the way. Our friend is no longer leading with their light. But yeah, the idea of, is there another way out? Is there another exit? If there is, it's still hidden. Nobody's discovered it. Not with any of the tools that we can imagine, other than perhaps staying up all night and just leaving the game there to see if perhaps there's some chance to leave at night. And I actually might try that. I'll leave the shade up there for a night. But while I'm here, the shade's just walking through darkness. There's nothing to see there. What else can we talk about? The Hermit. So always wondered who this character was. If we watch, we can do that tomorrow. We can watch the little film that the developers made. There is a character that looks just like that in that film. As I mentioned, our throne, a picture of the throne. Yeah, that's why I think the old blind guy was a shade, is a shade. Are we no longer a shade? If you look at the picture below, down here, it's kind of remarkable how it's drawn in white, a little bow tie, hinting towards that ending perhaps. Savior, family, duality. It's just, again, another hint to perhaps there's a moon ending. There's another one here I wanted to point out. I think it's here. It's not here. Is it just yellow? It is. Father. If you look at our home now, we put the image of Father. Father's also in blue. There's a lot of them. Oh, here's the image of the well. It resembles it quite well. But that image of Father, the silhouette, it does resemble that guy quite a bit. You'll probably see it better when we're at home and you can see them side by side. This is fine. This is normal. The game's calculating your exact position because you're still walking somewhere. You haven't quite arrived. So the game needs to calculate how much distance have you traveled in as much time has elapsed, and then figures out where you are, puts you back in your proper animation state and all that. We're still walking to the right, so we've got a ways to go yet. But we've done it. We've seen now 3 of the 5 endings. 5 endings. 3 of them. As you can imagine, just waiting for the longing to finish would be one ending. So where does this other ending come from? This one's interesting. There's a lot leading to it, and we haven't really explored much of it in the game yet. So we'll let the game speak for itself. But I just wanted to note that it's interesting, this other ending, because it's something that was added as sort of a DLC. It's not a DLC, it was just patched into the game. It wasn't there when the game was first released. When I played it on the Switch, the ending had always been there. And so this was put together before that time, which surprised me, reading on Steam that there's going to be an update. There's another ending, and having read before that there was only 4 endings, it confused me. Because the game as I knew it, there was always 5 endings. So I did mention a stork. And that there was a stork at the end of this ending. The developer felt it kind of was unnecessary, and so they removed it. But it wasn't removed from the game. If you were to use a debugger and look at the game contents, the stork is still sitting up there. It's just during that transition when the camera is panning up, it's just cut short. And the developer found it interesting that those assets have had other uses in the game. But it's not too much of a surprise. If you look at the pictures, there are a few there for a stork. And I did mention that that's something I would like to talk about at another time, but wasn't relevant yet. So I think when we get back, I'll paint some pictures of the stork. But I think that does it for now. I hope you enjoyed the little journey. Hope you enjoyed that big chunk of theory and how there's perhaps some theory that other people haven't thought of yet, or connections we don't know yet. If that person is another shade, why did they leave? What does that other picture mean on their wall? Some people have asked for, begged for a sequel. Even if it's not a sequel, what stories does the developer intend to tell? What other animations do they perhaps want to create that could perhaps tie things together? See you at home, little shade.